Hi, folks.
I'm very privileged to convene the meeting of the Council on Aging for February 7th. Would you all please rise for the 6th? Make the record right. Please stand for the pledge. Would you please, Len? Yes, sir.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now take the roll. Francine, please.
Commissioner Fotheringham?
Here.
Commissioner Grimm?
Let's get this show on the road.
Commissioner Healy?
Here.
Commissioner Kopacz?
Here.
Commissioner Loomis?
Presente.
Commissioner Norkin?
Here.
Commissioner Shentes is absent. Commissioner Searden?
Here.
And Commissioner Wing?
Here.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, certainly welcome. Welcome to all. And a special welcome to Betty Berry. And we're glad to see she's back. And for one of the first times, she's in the audience. She's not leading us in some sort of direction of our senior life. Thank you, Betty, and glad to see you here. Glad to see you here. This is the time now that we have public comments. As I was saying earlier, this is the time when anybody who has any ideas, have any thoughts that they want to bring before us as a senior community, we welcome you folks to come up here and give us your thoughts and what you're talking about. So our first person will be Paul Knorr. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Am I supposed to come up to the podium?
Most assuredly.
Most assuredly. Either mic?
Either mic.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Whatever your stature can handle.
Good. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I have two announcements. Number one, I'm here on I'm Paul Knorr, and I am here partially on behalf of the Council on Aging Senior Adult Master Plan, SAMP, Health Team. And we've been joining with the recreation team, and we've started a walking program. And something we've been noodling around with for months and doing a lot of planning, and we're going through changes, but what we want to do is find some way or find any way we can to encourage movement and activity in older adults, and in fact anyone, but certainly older adults. It's well known from a lot of places, a lot of resources. Movement, we're made for movement. I've heard somebody say that and it always stuck in my mind. We are. And we thrive to the degree we move in modest, healthy ways for our entire life. So we have a program. It is called Conejo Walks. You can read about it in the Acorn this week. You can go to a website. It is called ConejoWalks.wordpress.com. ConejoWalks.wordpress.com, and learn about it. It's evolving. There are a couple of features. We've been trying to feature our own walks. I went to one this morning. We have volunteers show up. People join us and walk. But then we're also trying to act as a clearinghouse for all the other walking activities local, because what we're finding is there are a lot of people already doing walking groups. Some semi-organized, just organically developed things that are reasonable size at places like the mall, at places like some parks. So what we're wrestling with is, do we really need to reinvent something? Because things already exist. So it's evolving, but go to ConejoWalks.wordpress.com, and please at least see what we're doing. Spread the word. We just want to make the options known to people who want to get out there and walk. So that's item number one. Item number two is I am presenting a seminar on Social Security and on all the issues about planning for Social Security. I do these regularly locally. The next one is going to be March 9th in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday at Los Robles Golf Course in their conference rooms. So if you're interested in that and you haven't been to one of those yet, please attend. It's educational. It's very important that people need to understand what's going on and how things work. Makes a big difference. Find out about that. You can just go to paulknorr.com. Knorr like the soup without the K. paulknorr.com. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Paul. Good work on hearing how the SAMP committee is doing on that. Thank you for working with that. I guess next up, let's invite a good friend of Council on Aging, Brenda Birdwell.
Good afternoon. I'm going to have to be Jack and the Beanstalk compared to Paul here. I think he's a little bit taller than I am. How's everybody doing this afternoon? My name is Brenda Birdwell. I'm a senior advocate for senior concerns along with our dear Betty Berry, who we're so happy is here today. Everything that I'm going to talk about, and I won't go on forever, I promise, is going to be available on our website, which is www.seniorconcerns.org. Betty Berry and I are senior advocates. Our office is at the Goebel Senior Center. That's at 1385 East Jans Road. And our phone number is 805-495-6250. Our Senior Concerns Adult Day Center is at 401 Hodenkamp. And the number there is 805-497-0189. And since Paul was just talking about his relationship with the Council on Aging Senior Adult Master Plan, I'm the chair of the Assistance and Volunteer Team, and we're very excited to say that we are really going to be launching the Conejo Connections Resource Center in the Oaks Shopping Center. That's what you're supposed to be calling it, either the Oaks or the Oaks Shopping Center, after 3 years of really hard work. At the end of February, soft opening, hard opening for my birthday present. My birthday's March 18th. We're doing it March 19th. 22. So anyway, we're very excited about this project. We've had a lot of great volunteers working on it for a long period of time. We're going to be in the lower level food court by where the food court and the restrooms are. And we've compiled a database with information for seniors all over the Conejo Valley. We've got great volunteers that are trained, and we're just really excited. So there's a few things that we have going on at Senior Concerns. We're continuing the Solving the Aging puzzle series for Caregiver U, and the next program is going to be next Tuesday. That's February the 12th from 4:30 to 6 at Senior Concerns at 401 Hodenkamp. And this is going to be about the emotional ups and downs of caregiving. And Felice Urban, who's a clinical social worker, will be talking about what to expect, what's normal, what might make you worry about some of the things that you're feeling. She's going to go over all of that. Respite care is available, but if you do need respite care, you need to call the 497-0189 number. And in celebration of Betty coming back to work, the first week she comes back, she's going to be teaching the ever-popular Will You Teach Your Next Driving Test? Well, yeah, that's the one, yes. She's been taking our brain fitness courses. Will you pass your next driving test? That's going to be Friday, February the 22nd at the Goebel Center at 1:30. I am going to be teaching another segment of my Healthy Living class for people who, to give them coping mechanisms for people with chronic conditions. And that's going to be 6 Fridays, starting March the 22nd through April the 26th from 1 to 3:30. So if you know anyone who's living with a chronic condition, it doesn't sound very sexy, but we do give you a lot of tools that you can work with to actually make your life better. Plus, I teach it, so. It's not too early to sign up for the Love Run. And Senior Concerns has a new Love Run website. So it's going to be June the 2nd, Sunday, June the 2nd. It's a great event. We've been doing it for many years. It's a lot of fun. And the funds from that go to our Meals on Wheels program. And speaking of Meals on Wheels, we're also going to be participating in Crop Walk again this year. And that's going to be Sunday, March the 3rd at Cal Lutheran. And part of the benefits from that go to our Meals on Wheels program as well. So I'm sure most of you do know, but Betty does have a weekly column in the Ventura County Star on Wednesdays, the Senior Advocate. If you get the Star, I'm the put the paper in your hands kind of girl. I still have to read my paper. You can also get it online, or you can go to the Senior Concerns website. And Andrea Gallagher has a column twice a month in the Acorn called The Other Side of 50. So again, all of this information is available on our website, www.seniorconcerns.org. Betty and I can be reached at 805-495-6250. And Senior Concerns Hodenkamp is 805-497-0189. And what we like to tell people is, we hope you don't need to come to see us because that means you need us. But the good news is, if you need us, we're there.
That's wonderful, Brenda. I mean, we're so happy that we're partnering with you on so many activities, and thank you, Andrea, for your support with us, too, here. Next, we have Lloyd Hartley. Lloyd?
Good afternoon. My name is Lloyd Hartley. I'm a director at Atria Hillcrest. We are an independent and assisted living community here in Thousand Oaks. We've been here for 24 years. A lot of people don't know that. I wanted to take 1 second and pay homage to what you folks are doing on the Council on Aging. You have done yeoman's work for so long, and not only things that you have done, but things that you are continuing to do. I would like for us to just give you guys a round of applause, because we really do appreciate all the hard work that you guys have put into place, and we just really appreciate it. The one announcement that I will say, I hope you guys liked lunch. Okay? In particular, the mahi-mahi I thought was particularly good. The other thing, though, really, one of the big announcements that we have is in April, the middle of April, we are opening up a memory care wing. It will have both private and what they call friendship suites. And our due date for opening is April 15th. So there will be a whole bunch of stuff going out to invite folks over. We'll have a model open probably in the beginning of March, and want you guys to be aware of that. And just so you know, I'm really working hard to get Elvis to come over and help us with the grand opening. So keep your fingers crossed. Thank you, folks.
Wow, that'd be quite a feat for AGRI. But oh man, well thank you for lunch, Lloyd. It was delicious. It really was. Thank you. Yeah, friendship suite, huh? Don't look at me that way. Next up will be Sandy Kane. Sandy is part of the Sampic Transit Implementing Committee, and she's got some thoughts on what's going to be happening in the near future. Sandy?
Hello, my name is Sandy Kane. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I'm volunteer in the community. Under the auspices of the Council on Aging, Thousand Oaks has developed these 5 committees to implement the Senior Adult Master Plan. They are housing, health care, recreation, transportation, assistance, and volunteers. And today I'm here for the Transportation Committee. We are the smallest committee, and we could use another member or two. If anybody's interested, would you please call our chair, Sherry Phoenix, at 805-402-5744. Let me just read our little mission that we have for. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for Thousand Oaks seniors and all residents by advocating for enhancement and maintenance of our city's existing high-quality public transit. And we really are lucky with the transit system that we have in Thousand Oaks. Even in the last couple of years that our committee has been in existence, we've come up with all kinds of ideas for Dial-A-Ride and the public fixed route transportation and so on. And the committee has no power, but we have the ability to suggest to the City Council, and they've been very responsive to the things that we've come up with. The Transportation Committee now is offering free travel training classes. It's something to get us all comfortable with traveling on public transportation. It also has information about Dial-A-Ride, but those who can might be able to take the bus. And these classes are going to be taught by a special firm in Camarillo called Mobility Management Partners. Today we have with us the Director of Operations for Mobility Management Partners, Michael Culver. And Michael will tell us a little bit more about exactly how the program is going to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Members of the Commission, members of the public, it's great to be here. Just a little bit of history. Mobility Management Partners, we're a nonprofit corporation. We're a sister corporation to a firm named R&D Transportation, which has been providing transportation management services for the Tri-Counties Regional Center and other regional centers throughout state of California. The regional centers are the state agencies that provide services for people with developmental disabilities. That's where the whole travel training program that we have was birthed, was in working with the regional centers and working with those folks. What we've come to realize is that using the transit system can sometimes be very confusing and really kind of scary to folks, especially if they've spent their entire life driving. And so we see this as an opportunity to help folks, particularly when you're having to transition from being a driver to being reliant on others to drive you or reliant on public transportation. It can be a pretty scary ground to go into, especially if you're not familiar with using public transit. And so what we're here for is to help folks with that transition. The program is going to be a classroom environment. I believe we're going to do it once every quarter. We're going to have classes where we'll have a group setting. We'll talk about the benefits of using transit, the pluses and minuses, how to navigate the system, what kind of fare media is available, and all of that type of thing. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're partnering with Thousand Oaks Transit, and they're going to provide a bus, and we're going to have essentially a field trip bus for the day. And so if you're interested in that part of it, you'll need to register ahead of time because there's going to be a limited number of seats. But what we're going to do is actually have a transit bus. We'll go through the process of, how you board and disembark from the bus and, get folks comfortable with the actual use of the bus itself. And then we're actually going to take a ride around town and show you some of the key transit stops that there are, and really to try to educate folks on how much they can really do on the public transit system. Oftentimes we're afraid that, but if I need to go to the doctor, that's not going to get me there. Or if I need to go shopping or, all of these things, well, there's a lot available in the public transit system, particularly in Thousand Oaks. You've got a very good transit system and a very responsive transit system. The staff and the provider are very interested in making sure that the needs of the community are being met, so they're constantly looking at the service and where there can be enhancements and where things can be improved. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're going to be doing. We've got some dates on it. There's, I believe Sandy's got access to the flyers, but our first session is going to be on February 20th, and this is going to be the classroom session. It's going to be a 30-minute long session. It's going to be at 12:30 at the Global Center, and we'll have some of our staff who are experienced travel trainers. They know the area, they know the system, and they're going to be going through that classroom environment with you. And then the next meeting is going to be on May 22nd at 12:30 p.m., also at the Global Center. And this is where we're going to have a 30-minute private bus trip. And again, Thousand Oaks Transit has been kind enough to offer to supply a vehicle and a driver. And so it's really going to be a fun experience. And I really encourage folks, if you've ever thought about using the transit system, or if you have those concerns that, what if I'm not able to drive in another 6 months? How am I going to get around? Well, this is really a great way to get familiar with this resource and to really learn how to use the system and use it properly. The other thing that I want to mention is we also are involved in doing the ADA certifications, they're called, for Ventura County. What that is people with disabilities, in order to use the paratransit system and get some of the benefits of that, there's a process that they go through under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is the ADA. And this is a process where the disability is evaluated, and then a determination is made whether the individual is capable of using the regular public transit or whether they really need to rely on the dial-a-ride. If they do need to rely on the dial-a-ride for their transportation needs, then they're given a special certification, and they're allowed to use the dial-a-ride system. Where this particularly comes into play is if you have a disability that prevents you from using public transit, and if you need to travel outside of the city of Thousand Oaks. Internally in the city, there's a real good system for you being able to use the dial-a-ride system, but particularly if you ever need to transfer, if you're going into Ventura or Oxnard or Simi Valley or any of the surrounding communities, oftentimes you'll have to transfer from one system to the other, and there's not always a good connection just based on the fact that you're a senior that will get you from one system to the other. However, if you qualify for the ADA eligibility, then you automatically are eligible to ride both systems. So we encourage people to consider that as a possibility as well. And that's about all I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, and thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Sandy and Mike, for joining us. Certainly want to encourage everyone who's looking at, sort of like what Mike was saying, you know, it may be a time that it's not going to be, the keys will be taken away, I think, as David's going to explain to us how we're going to do that. But do encourage you to consider public and the dial-a-ride opportunities. We have a request from the Peanut Gallery.
Well, thank you.
Yes, Andrea, you're recognized.
I'm a good peanut. I just wanted to add on to what he was saying about the ADA and the interviews. We actually have forms at the Global Adult Center for that very purpose, and then once the forms are filled out and sent up, they are now doing the interviews at the Global Adult Center. So it's kind of a clearinghouse for everybody to come in and do that a couple times a month. So it's available and easy to get to, and we actually have the forms there as well.
Thank you, Andrea.
If I might, one thing that I neglected to mention, in addition to the classroom setting for these travel trainings, we also, this is all being done through a federal grant that we have through the Ventura County Transportation Commission. We also have the ability to do individualized trainings if your needs are more than just a classroom setting. If you were to come to the 30-minute session and still don't really feel comfortable with it, then you can have that conversation with us, and we can see about having a more customized program where we can do some one-on-one training or maybe some partner training or small group trainings. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities here. So even if you come to the 30-minute and are still a little bit, you know, unsure about using the system, you can still talk to us, and we can try to arrange for a more in-depth training for you and really partner with you to help you use the system effectively. So, thank you.
Thanks again, Michael, and thank you again, Andrea, through the Global Adult Center, in helping us partner and bring this to Thousand Oaks on a much broader basis. As Michael said, individual training is available now. If you want to get into it now, contact Michael, and he'll get things set up for you. But if you want to go into a general classroom situation to get started, please come to the February 20th session and learn more about it. The next person we have is a good long-term friend with the Council on Aging. Susan Cashman, who herself is a representative of the Age of Elegance, is here to talk a little bit about Miss Senior California. Susan.
Meeny, miny, mo. I think I'll take this one. Don't want to hide the banner. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I'm Susan Cashman. I am Miss Senior California 2007, and I'm the retiring director of the Miss Senior Conejo Valley pageant. And I want to tell you a little bit about this. The Miss Senior Conejo Valley pageant is an opportunity that is exciting and wonderful for women, senior women, 60 years of age and over, and who are citizens of the United States. It is one of eight preliminary pageants throughout the state of California. The top two winners from each of these preliminary pageants will then go on to the Miss Senior California pageant. And the winner of the Miss Senior California pageant, that is in August. Miss Senior California pageant winner will go on to Atlantic City in September and compete for Miss Senior America. Senior America started way back in 1972 when a young intern became very concerned as he was answering calls from a hotline in a crisis hotline in a hospital. And he said 99% of the callers are all older women, and they're all lonely. And they don't have anything to do. Their families don't have time. They're depressed. He said these women deserve more than this. When they reach the age of 60, that is the age of elegance. And he started the first Miss Senior America pageant. Today there are over 30 states that participate. And I have to tell you something very interesting. Last Miss Senior Conejo Valley of 2011 went on to the California pageant. She didn't even place. Didn't even place. She was heartbroken and said she was going to hang up her hat. And I got in touch with her and I said, no, you're not. You're not going to quit. It took me 3 tries to win the crown, and I finally did it. You can't quit. So she decided to re-enter again. She couldn't re-enter Senior Conejo Valley because our rules do not allow a winner to re-enter the following year at the same venue. They have to go to, there's 8 choices to go to. She won that. She won the Miss, and I said to her, I said, the judges are stupid. What can I say? Not my judges. Not my judges. Not my judges. They picked the winner with Miss Senior Conejo Valley. They picked the winner. But I said, you never know what the judges are thinking. You have to try again and try again. She did. And she won Miss Senior California. She went this year, 2012. She went on to this national pageant and she won Miss Senior America. So you just never know. You have to keep hanging in there. And by the way, I have some flyers. This is her. This is Elizabeth Howard. You guys probably remember her from the year before last. She sang, she did what I asked her to sing Sempre Libre instead of doing a low song and then a high song, and she did. And I think that did not hurt her at all. But anyway, we're very, very proud of her. And very briefly, women, we need contestants. We really need contestants. We can't have a pageant without contestants. And I can only promise you two things. You're going to have a lot of fun, and you're going to meet a lot of wonderful women. And talent comes in any package. It's just like our queens come in every size, shape, and color. It doesn't matter. It is not a beauty contest. There is no bathing suit competition. So rest assured, you are judged in 4 categories. One is the personal interview, which the contestants meet one-on-one. The audience doesn't get to see this. And they're asked different questions like, what would you do if you won the crown of Miss Senior California? If you had a chance to invite a celebrity to your house, who would it be and why? Things like that. Then there is the philosophy of life. And this must be recited within 35 seconds. And it's not a history of your life. It's a philosophy. What has inspired you? What do you believe in? What do you want to share with your peers in the younger generation? And then there is a little modeling. You don't have to be a rockhead or a professional model. We keep it very simple because we want our contestants to have fun and enjoy the experience. And then, of course, the fourth entry that you're judged on is the most popular, and that is talent. And again, you don't have to sing or dance or play a musical instrument. I've had ladies recite poetry that they wrote themselves that was fabulous. I had one gal that did the story of taps. And actually, this was one of my competitors in the Miss Senior America pageant. She did the story of taps, and it was so magnificent. She won Miss Senior South Carolina. She won the state title, and she was first runner-up to Miss Senior America. So talent can be anything. I've had ladies bring in their knitting, crafts. We just want you to take part. And one gal came up to me, and she was so sweet, and she said, I know I'm not going to win, but I just want to be part of this. And that's what we want. This is an opportunity for you ladies. So come on. Get out your evening gown, dust off those high heel shoes, and take them down a little, and we want you to be comfortable, too. The pageant will be May 19th at the Goebel Senior Center, the wonderful Goebel Senior Center, again, at 1:30. Is there anything else I haven't told you? My name, again, is Susan Cashman, and my telephone number is 818-883-8975. And yes, one last thing. Our retired state director is going to take over this pageant this year. I will be assisting her. And we would like very much to get a director. You don't have to be a senior. You can be a younger person, but we need a director, and I'd really like to leave it to somebody who is a member of this community here. So if you know of anyone, that doesn't pay anything. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're all volunteers. But we do this because we believe in the pageant and for what it stands for and what it does for senior women. So please, if anybody's willing to come on, I will train you. I have all the contacts, everything you need. I will work beside you gladly. And the first thing I'd like to do is invite you to come to the Culver City pageant. If you haven't seen the pageant here, just to see what it's all about. It's fun. It's great. It's a positive feeling. It makes you really feel good. Anyway, thank you very much. I have some brochures over here in the background. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Thank you so much for having me. And there's 3 of my judges right there, and I love you dearly.
Oh, Susan, you've been such a wonderful representative of the Age of Elegance again. We'll hate to see you go. You've really been such a spark plug for this event that's made it so enjoyable the last couple of years. through her tutelage, not just last year's, but there was a gal that my first year judging who became Miss Senior California, and I can't remember her name, but Susan is the one who can get you going and get you through this, and maybe even win something and see a little bit different part of the world. But thank you. Okay, any other public comments at this time? If not, we'll close and move on to the main part of the session here. All right, item 5. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Healy to introduce our speaker. Nancy, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. First, I'd like to say we are thrilled with the turnout today. It's just such a good crowd, and it's been really a lively meeting so far. I'd really also like to thank Lloyd and the Atria Hillcrest catering staff for a wonderful lunch. They gave it to us free of charge, and I know we all enjoyed it, so thank you. I did. And if you've liked this one, we have a program the first Wednesday of every month that's televised. We've had some excellent speakers, upcoming programs. Jim, we have UCLA on again about the new UCLA Center that's here, and they will have 4 or 5 doctors speaking.
We're going to specifically be talking about prevention, osteoporosis, some of the things you can do. There will be a doctor talking about mixing of meds and the danger of that. So
this is
a very
a March program. I think our May speaker, if I'm correct, is a senior depression, Lisa. So we have some excellent speakers. Please feel free to come. We don't always have a great free lunch like this, but okay, we will. All right. Francine wants me to finish up already. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Okay, I have wanted to have David Soley as a speaker for 3 years since I saw him as an ombudsman at an ombudsman in service. He is a wonderful speaker. His message will mean a lot, I think, to all of you. He just asked me to keep it short, as did Francine just now, but he said not to say so much about what a great speaker he is and how much you're going to get out of it, but it's true. So I'm just going to show you, this is David's book. It's $9, if I'm correct, on Amazon. It is truly a help for people who work in the professions, for anybody. It's help if you're a senior, if you're a hospice volunteer. Okay, Francine. All right, please. It's a great book, and I want to present Mr. David Soley. Wonderful message. Thank you, David, very much.
Are we first slide? Oh, very good.
TOTV, will you put on PowerPoint, please?
We're good. Thank you. Many times I've asked how I became interested in this topic, which was not my first topic of choice when I entered the educational system, and I have to always remind people that what I'm going to talk about today is really the product of failure. I think that most of us don't invite failure into our life. We would prefer failure to stay outside the door and we just become successful and have a great life. But I think failure basically finally humbles us at some point in our life to open up our hearts and our minds to find something new we're supposed to find. And I say to people that I set out with one goal in mind in my life in terms of being a clinician and being a healthcare provider, and I wound up being involved in geriatric psychology and aging. And it really, the lead up to it was my education, that I became introduced to geriatric medicine, but the turning point in my life, and I always find when I sit down and talk to older adults, and we finally get beyond the posturing and we're relaxed and we're having a conversation, I always say to them at some point, what was the turning point in your life? And we all have turning points to talk about. But this turning point occurred in 1989 when my father died after a long bout with cancer. And I stepped in to be the dutiful son and save my mother from the perils of widowhood. Who could have done a better job than me? A degree in clinical medicine, including training in psychology. I mean, I'd been to college for 12 years after high school. I was credentialed. I was seeing patients. I was smart. I was available. And I'm here to say that after a year of my careful tutelage with my mother, she and I were not speaking. Now, it is common for a human being to blame communication breakdown on somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault, never my fault. but I was trained enough to realize that that was not a position I could be in as a clinician. And I looked carefully at what was going on between us. And I realized that on one level, her and I were speaking two different languages. I mean, I thought I was right, but it didn't really matter if I was right because I wasn't communicating with her. I was not getting through in a way I was actually provoking her. And so I set out in 1989 to begin some research. I've been trained in developmental psychology, and I always knew that there was something going on developmentally with aging that I didn't understand. But I really think it was very important. But I went out and began my work, and there was a missing piece somewhere in the process. And so my goal was to find that piece. And I'm here to say that I at least found part of it. But I also found along the way that this inability to communicate doesn't occur just over mundane things or over big things, but arrives at the most inopportune times and can happen at the worst possible time, as a matter of fact, just when you need to get something done, which is what Bill and Susan found out when they sat down to have a conversation with their parents after their parents' life had taken a turn for the worse. Bill and Susan were quintessential boomers who had gone to public school, my goodness, not private school, how could that be, and got degrees and had families and were living a great life. They're in their mid-50s and their parents were in their late 70s, and they got the phone call one night. It's a call that comes in at 1:30. All of us know what that call means. It's either someone drunk or it's bad news, but it cannot be good stuff. And it wasn't good stuff. Their father had a heart attack. He was in intensive care in a hospital in a city where they didn't live, because none of us actually live anywhere where our parents live anymore. So being good boomers, they flew home and they got there, and modern cardiology is very powerful in America. We may not be good when you're trying to get heart disease, but we're brilliant once you get it. And her dad was rescued. The clot was dissolved, and he was in good shape, and they were there for a couple of days, and he went to rehab, and they were feeling quite good about it. The problem was that after a few days of being home, after not being home for a number of months, they realized that the issue just wasn't Dad, but it was Mom. That Mom's soft memory loss issues were now more dramatic, and there were things she was simply not understanding. In fact, it was becoming precarious. Does she actually be allowed to be at home by herself? So being two boomers that are well-educated and very caring, they sat down and they plotted out how they were going to somehow have this conversation with their parents. First of all, they did their homework on where their parents lived, because the house the parents were in, they'd had that house for 52 years, and they were basically married to that house. And they found independent living and assisted living and resources, and they talked to people, and they got a good lay of the land and some good choices, and so they wanted to have a conversation. So on the 8th day after Dad had a heart attack, they're going to go back. So they had the talk, as we call it now. That's the newest thing in gerontology, is having the talk. Not always goes as well as you'd hoped. And so they sat down in the living room of their childhood, essentially, the one that had the king chair, and then the queen chair, and then that big coffee table, and then a couch on the other side is very low, so you're always downstream from your parents talking to them. And their father, who was a spokesperson for the family, spoke first, and he said, we're honored that you came home, and there seems to be something on your mind, and it seems kind of formal, but let's go ahead and have this conversation. So they began, and they began with marketing 101, they began with compliments to their parents. We're so proud of how long you've been independent, how well you've maintained this house, and how this terrible scare came and, was frightening, but you battled back from it, and you're doing a great job, and we admire you, and we honor the courage you have to be and carry all this load. But things have changed. Things are not the same. And they're not going back. And we're worried. We don't live here anymore, and we're worried that we're not here and something could happen. And so we think not that you have to do anything so much as we like to talk about the possibility if you did something, what it might look like. Let's have a little conversation around what some choices are. And so at that point, magically, the brochures from Kinko's came out on the coffee table. People waving from gardens and from beaches and living happy and drinking wine and loving their life. And they said, these are some choices that we want you to look at and realize that if you decide not to live here, you have some places that are local that would be that might be appropriate for you. And they finished, and their parents, being from the Brokaw generation, actually let them finish their entire pitch. Did not interrupt them. My people would have cut them off halfway through. Stop, I don't want to talk about this, but they let them have the whole pitch, and they did. And then their father, who was the spokesman for the family, spoke, and he began with a very heartfelt response and said, it's hard for us to explain to you what it means for you to come back and come home with us in such terrible shape. We are deeply moved by your courage and by your love for us, and we are proud that you're our kids. And it was scary. I thought I was going to die, and I could not imagine leaving your mother alone. And I'm not going to die now, and I feel better, and I think that we have recovered some ground. But there's two things you need to know, so there's no bad feelings about this. Number one, your mom and I know we're not the same. We're not going back. We know things are different, and they've changed, and we're not the same people we were, and we have issues. But we are going to solve these issues. We are going to confront these issues. We are going to do this the way we deal with everything in our life, our entire marriage. We're going to do it together. And we'll find an answer, and we'll figure out what that answer is. And just to be clear, we're not moving. So when Bill and Susan were in the rent-a-car return line at the airport, staring out the windshield at nothing in particular, I think they would have appreciated this wonderful quote by George Bernard Shaw that said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion has taken place." How many of us have spoken until we're out of breath at somebody and they've gone, "No, thanks, I don't want to do it"? And so I think the question that crosses our mind in this situation, in all situations where this type of communication seems to be going well and then turns out to be a disaster, is that what happened? I think the answer to that lies partly in a change in our structure. If you could leave the slides on, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And don't go off them for a while, please, because we're going to be using a lot of them. Part of it is in the structure of where Bill and Susan's parents came from, which was a communal generation. I grew up in that generation for a while. I lived in an immigrant neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, blue collar. My grandmother lived 2 blocks away. My aunts were 3 blocks away. We were very poor financially. We were very rich socially. And with the advent of my generation, however, we deconstructed that population. I come from the dispersed generation, the boomers. We arrived and then we moved because the country changed and we have economic opportunity. We all had to go someplace else. So we did. And that turned out to be a good thing. It wasn't a bad thing. I mean, it was kind of hard leaving home, but we all went and we all lived someplace else. And I think it's part of the change of the social fabric. But what happened is that we lost embedded knowledge of older adults. I say the word embedded because it's critical. I'll give you an example of embedded and how it makes a difference. I have a friend of mine. I went to the University of Washington, and she took Spanish in grade school, Spanish in high school, Spanish in college, and went to Spain and landed on the ground and said, "I stink." She lived with a family for a year, and she was fluent in Spanish. And I think the problem is that what you don't know by having people embedded is radically different than what you know by theory. So we adopted a theory about older adults, and they were not living with us like they were in the communal world, and so we developed some opinions about them, a lot of it incorrect. And what happened was we had this aging blind spot. We looked at old aging. We said, we know exactly what this is, what it means, what the issues are. We've got it. Don't tell us anymore. We're completely set. I felt I was set when I sat down with my mother at 72 years old to be able to work with her life. There was nothing to learn. It was kind of obvious. Older adults are transparent. All the information was in, but I was wrong. And so we have this aging blind spot, and then we in some ways, like trying to fly a plane without some critical instrument, we set out to engage their life. And when we do that, we're actually trying to partner with them with incomplete information. This is the worst possible place for a human being to be because they think they know, they don't know what they don't know, and they're so damn sure they're right that they start bossing everybody around, and they're wrong. They're off. You're off the mark. You don't get it. You think you get it. You have part of it, but you only have part of the story. And I think this incomplete information is what's been disastrous for everybody in this space who's had great ideas and not been able to connect because they're using, I think, the wrong language and they have the wrong insight. And so what happens is that we all wind up having what's called provocative signaling. Bill and Susan had the right idea. Their parents needed to consider living someplace else, but the way they pitched it simply provoked their parents to become hostile towards, how dare you invade my space and tell me what to do. And with that provocative signaling, what's best for you, we call it in medicine unwanted advice. You're overweight, you have hypertension, you're diabetic, and you lose weight, take your pills and get on a diabetic diet. And the patient goes, goodbye. Or you see them in 10 years and they haven't changed because you cannot offer unwanted advice to people and they do not hug you and sing Kumbaya. The issue is that you have to have a different approach, especially when you offer advice. So we have provocative signaling, which then winds up with communication gridlock. And the problem with this is that once you back somebody into a corner, dignity does not allow them to release that and come out. They're in. And they actually will hold that terrible position just for the sake of dignity. So we back them up really quick, and then we can't figure out why they're hostile. We call them uncooperative and probably not as smart and impractical and illogical. And the answer is we've provoked them. We've challenged them in ways because we don't know. Once we know, we would never use that kind of language ever again. But in the beginning, none of us knew. It was just one of these things that we lived someplace else. When we were younger as boomers, it didn't matter because we were all young. But when we became older and they became our aging parents, something else happened, and we needed to figure out what happened. So part of it is we didn't know. And my work and my research has all been about what can make this better. Because the interesting fact of talking about a problem is irrelevant to me on one level if you can't tell me what's going to make it better. I appreciate your observation. Now give me some insight how we're going to make this better. And so I think part of it is, and this is a hard part for human beings, because human beings as they age at times become very resilient to changing or resilient to new information, or become so sure of the truth that they think they carry in their heart and their mind and their body that there's no other truth available to them. And so we can provide new information, but if you won't update your assumptions, there's no chance of this ever being useful to you. It's interesting to me that in counseling, when you see, in marriage counseling, when you sit down with a couple that's been sent to you by the court, because they're supposed to have counseling before they decree the divorce, or you have to give counseling a try, even though you said you really want to get divorced. No, I want you to try to a referee. And you talk to them. The ones that never have a chance of ever repairing their relationship are people who will not update their assumptions about the other person. So part of the problem with aging is if we don't get some new information, A, and B, we do not accept that and to some degree and try it out in our assumptive model, try it. It's very hard for us to be able to have the kind of empathy that it takes to be able to effectively communicate with older adults. I was flying back from New York about a year ago, and I had an executive from a CEO from a very large corporation ask me what I did, and I think he was just being nice. He was really wanting to play his iTunes and have a martini, but he was asking me what I did, and I told him. He said, "How do you do that?" I get it. How do you do it? I said, "Well, I try to first of all change people's hearts, and then hopefully change their words." So part of the new information, if it doesn't change your heart, you'll not update your assumptions, and you'll not be in any different place than when you started. It has really three benefits. This information, as I've studied it for 20 years and used it and taught it and keep writing about it and writing new books about it, it has three benefits for all of us in the process, those of us who are adult children, those of us who are aging parents. First of all, it helps us understand what has caught the older adults' attention. They are not the same. It is not all pathology. It is aging, but they are not the same. And if they're not the same, why aren't they the same? What agenda has got their attention completely and caught their attention? Number two is, what are they trying to signal to us? I wish I could say human beings were, forthcoming and they mean what they say and they say what they mean. When I was in my senior year and I was on a rotation at University of Washington, I was in a psych clinic, and I was working with this family, and they all were completely dishonest. Everyone would say one thing in one meeting and then they'd say something else in another meeting. Finally, I went to my preceptor. I said, "You know what? I don't know what to do. They're telling me different stories." And he says, "Oh, it's just Earth. All human beings down here are liars. Don't believe a word they say." Oh, well, that settles everything for me. I appreciate that. He said, "But watch their actions." He said, "Forget their words. Pretend like they're speaking some foreign language." And so it's their behavior. So human beings signal with their behavior. So by understanding this agenda, you can start deciphering the code of what the behavior is telling you. Many times the behavior is so blatant. I walk into a situation and I would say, "You need to do this," and they would be transformative. And they say, "How do you know?" I said, "Look at the behavior in front of you. Forget the words. Look at the behavior. What is the signal?" So it helps you understand how they're signaling. And number three, it helps you to become a better signaler, a better message, because it's all about how and what you say. I can promise you that you can change a single verb or a single adjective and change the course of somebody's life. I don't say that casually because I don't make those kind of promises because Earth is too flaky and unstable and you never know what's going to happen. But I do know this, that if you change your lexicon, you can find a word, a noun, a verb, an adjective that'll change somebody's life because you've connected with them. And so the benefit is figure out what's got their attention. Number two, figure out what they're trying to tell you. And number three, figure out how to communicate and connect with them. To do this, we have to use developmental psychology. Now, there's a lot of other kinds of psychology that are available, and I know a lot of them, and I'm not a Freudian. I don't believe that hello has 6 sexual meanings to it. I just think that, there are other psychologies that are more practical. I like developmental psychology a lot for the primary reason that I studied it and used it for my research is because it has this great benefit called it explains where people are coming from even when they don't know where they're coming from. If you don't know where somebody's coming from psychologically, you are driving your car with emergency brake on, and that smoke coming from behind your car is your car burning up, okay? You've got to know where someone's coming from. I realize that experiences in culture and race and gender all make it very specific to that particular life, but behind that are some very deep patterns that have a great commonality. To not know that is to throw away half the information about that person, about where your on-ramp for conversation is. So developmental psychology I use a lot because it has three benefits that I think are really, really important for everybody who is dealing with someone on earth or taking care of someone on earth. Number one is it's very easy to understand. Number two, it's really easy to use. And number three, it's really effective. How do I know that? Because, well, we use it in pediatrics. We have saved parenting with developmental psychology. We've described developmental tasks of 2-year-olds and stopped parents from beating the heck out of their kids and killing them. Because that 2-year-old's tantrum is not about you, it's about them trying to become independent. So developmental psychology does explain things in a very useful, easy to understand, very effective way. And what's lovely about it is that it doesn't scold people when they see it. They go, oh, you're right. That's never going to work. I mean, I've had the experience in clinic where I've sat down with parents who have basically been lowering the boom on 3-year-olds who say no and don't want to be toilet trained, and had a conversation about their developmental mission, what that little 3-year-old guy was trying to do. I've had parents sob. I had to actually get out of the room for a while and give him a chance to compose himself because they go, this has been horrible. I said, well, you didn't know. You know now, so now we think differently. We do something different. So developmental psychology shows you where you're coming from. It's easy to understand, easy to use. The model works like this. Number one, different age groups have different tasks. So we divide the world into 5 age groups. We divide into childhood, the much feared adolescent, young adulthood, middle age, and old age. So there are 5 big groups, and each group has a set of tasks that you're asked to accomplish. It's very sequential. As you pass one age barrier, a new set of tasks arrive. The old tasks fade away, new tasks show up. The tasks are involuntary. God does not send you an email and say, are you in? You're in. You're in by being 50, you're in by being 17, you're in. And when you're in, I mean it is unconscious. Software shows up at night, Apple sends it to you to your brain, loads it, no password necessary, and it's very consumptive. It is not casual. It is not, are you interested, or this might annoy you. It becomes who you are as you express who you are. I'm going to say it again, it is consumptive. And of course, because this is Earth, it comes as paradoxical pairs. It actually is going to pull you in 2 separate ways and create great tension in your life. It's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to annoy you. It's going to make people not like you for a while, or maybe forever, who knows. But my point is, as you hit that phase, you will be confronted with a double set of marching orders that are going to pull you in 2 very painful directions and challenge you and ask you to do something. And the purpose of these tasks are not just God being casual. They are there for growth. If you follow the tasks well, you grow and get ready and you're prepared for the next phase. Follow it poorly and you take the luggage with you. And we all take a lot of luggage with us. So let me give an example so it makes it totally clear what I'm talking about. The teen years. God bless them. Academically, we say the developmental tasks of teenagers are free yourself, 1, from parental dominance. Those terrible, oppressive, meanie parents are wrecking my life, but preserve parental security. Preserve parental security. I raised 2 teenage girls, and I got so dumb when they were 15. And they told me that, too. I mean, they were pretty strong. You don't get it, Dad. I can take care of myself. I'm grown up. I'm an adult. I want to be trusted. You don't trust me. I want to be independent. I don't want you telling me what to do. And may I have the car and $40? So it's a delicate task, because if you fire your parents too aggressively, you're out of the will, right? And if you're a wimp about it, you're in the garage at 50 looking for yourself. So, you have to figure out how to get free. But the goal is to become free, is to somehow find a way, a middle ground, where you have to basically be obnoxious, you have to be forceful, but in a way that is reparative, to come back, to get you to be independent, so that person comes back in the door at 22 and you love that person, and all the scars of getting yourself, hammered are less important than the fact they're back. Is that not the truth? Just come back. All's forgiven. So I think that's a perfect example of how developmental tasks are very paradoxical. They put a lot of pressure on you. So having said that, what is the developmental agenda of older adults? And when I got to this, I was told it doesn't exist. We stopped using developmental psychology right after the teen years. And I said, nonsense. And so I'm going to talk about what I came up with and how I think it applies and why it changes everything in terms of understanding older adults. Older adults are managing two paradoxical developmental tasks. They are caught up in this tension. And when does it arrive? Well, I think it arrives in the late 60s. I think middle age arrives. I think the entree to middle age is 45. In my new book, I'm talking about 45 to 65. I think between 65 and 70, those tasks, go to the background. And old age, the task of old age, that last set of marching orders arrives for you. And they're paradoxical, meaning to say that their goal is not to be resolved per se. Their goal is to create maximum tension in your life, to get you to pay attention to something and resolve that something before you're done. So let me say it again. It's to get your attention, to make your life uncomfortable in a healing, growth kind of way, or not, and get you to resolve something until you're done. Our job is to recognize the task and facilitate the task. It is not to negate the task, to override the task, to demean the task, to make fun of the task. Our job is to appreciate the task and figure out how we partner with it. And by the way, this is so true with Betty Davis. These tasks come at the worst possible time. When your body's older, things are more complicated, you're involved in health care, you may have lost a spouse, you're standing in the breach, you're called to the Alamo, offered a weapon, told to go to the wall, and said, "This will not turn out well. But I expect you to hold up really strong until it's not well. I may not even understand what you're doing, I can't help you." It's a big job. So I always thought this quote was really so true about this is the mother of all developmental tasks, no matter what we think about life. Here's task number 1. And by the way, if you learn nothing from this presentation, if you get this, you're 90% in the door. If, in fact, you can add it to your assumptions. If you get this and don't like it, you're 90% out of the door. This is the annuity for everyone in therapy who treats boomers, because this is going to actually take the boomers down at their knees. Task number 1, maintain control in a world where all control is being lost. Let me say it again. Maintain control in a world where all control is being lost. This task arrives at such force and at such density that the person caught up in it cannot believe that this is actually happening to the way it is. If it happened to you in younger life, which it does sometimes. Sometimes you get the flu and you feel really sick and you want to die, and then it goes away in 3 days. Sometimes you break up with someone and you want to die, but you don't, and you go on. Sometimes you get fired and you want to die, and you go on. But this is a cluster that shows up and lays on you and doesn't back off. And when we actually understand the battle for control in an older adult's life, and we actually have some empathy for it, we develop a whole new respect for the courage it takes to get up in the morning and deal with these moving parts of control being taken away. So the battle for control is fought. It's like being in 6 Alamos at one time. Usually with people who really just simply want you to pay attention and mind and stop being an old person, just do what I say and get on with the process. Kind of a painful thing to hear when you basically are struggling for dignity in your life and independence. Loss of health. Takes you down quicker than anything in the world, keeps you down and won't let you back up. If you're sick and young, usually it's self-limited, or usually you can go and ambulate and be okay and get it fixed unless it's a terrible disease. But when you become a supplicant to the healthcare system when you're old, you're in. With congestive failure, arthritis, renal disease, anything you want to say that calls you back. And you don't have one thing, you have lots of things. And you're back. And when you're back, you're out of control. You're out of control when you go on the door. You're out of control when they send you a bill. You're out of control when you go to the pharmacy. You're out of control when your kids don't understand what the heck's going on. You're out of control. Because in America, the 3 things that we do for you in terms of your health care, number 1 is we test you. Boy, do we test you. I got a CAT scan. I got a blood test. I got this. I got that. I got this. I got that. Then I got procedures. I can cut you. I can radiate you. I can do whatever you want. A lot of procedures, all at a fair price. And the 3rd leg of the trifecta is I'm going to medicate you. Big time. You and the pharmacist are going to be really good friends when I'm done. So imagine trying to juggle all of this information coming at you in a language you'll never understand and a billing you'll never figure out through 3 lifetimes. Even at their funeral, they'll be talking about your bill. So just being sick alone and being a supplicant of the healthcare system takes away so much of your control, if not all of it. Loss of family and friends. I had a friend die at 40, went to his funeral. I was 45 years old. The wailing at that funeral to this day still makes me very emotional. Someone dying at 40 is against the laws of nature, never mind a child dying. But when you get to my mother's age, when she died at age 90, all her friends were gone. Family of 8, all gone, except her older sister was 94. The neighbors were gone, the grocer was gone, the pastor was gone, doctors, 3 of them said they don't last. They just up and died on her. Friends, children of friends had passed away. Her social fabric was really, really thin. The people who actually knew Carol Soley, not very many around left on earth. Loss of social status. My grandmother was an immigrant from Norway. My grandfather fought in the Spanish-American War. My grandmother was an elder. She held court in her house on Sunday after church. If you wanted to go to nursing school or date somebody, guess where you went? You went for a sign-off from grandmother. But when I showed up, elders stopped being elders in our society. And they know it. And they know that we do not come to them for sign-off. We do not come to them necessarily for advice, that they have become not a burden, a project, a task, something we have to work with and manage. And they know they've been de-statused in terms of how they sit inside of our social structure. Loss of productive engagement. You know, up through 50 or 55, the world talks to you in very encouraging terms. Are you going to grow up? You're going to get married? You're going to have family? You're going to go to college? You're going to start a new business? You're going to start a family? What are you going to do? Are you going to be successful? You know, everyone keeps wanting to talk to you about what the next thing is for you. And then after 50, people stop saying that to you. They don't give you goals anymore. They start saying weird stuff to you, like, you look good. Is that a life goal? How's that? How do I know when I've achieved it? Or things that are even more confusing, like you keep busy. Like you had to double down the Adderall and keep spinning in a circle, something like that. Or, you know, or the worst thing you can say to someone who's over 70, who's, by the way, whose IQ, verbal skills, problem solving, and reflective capabilities are at an all-time high. Maybe they don't speak fast, maybe they don't move fast, but their brains are on fire with a deep reflective capability, and nothing has been lost. And we say to them, enjoy yourself. Like leisure would be a goal of anybody on earth who's got a brain operating and loves people, who's been here for 70 years and wants to make a difference. What a sad thing to say to somebody. Loss of driver's license. Yes, we want them out of the car, and I appreciate out of the car. I appreciate it can be dangerous. I appreciate that we need to have more common sense about it, but we say it in the worst possible ways, and we do it in the worst possible ways. My mom was she's like 84 years old, and I had published my book, and I was, you know, feeling pretty proud of myself about having done that, and I'd integrated the assumptions in my conversation with her, and I was having this little moment where I was going to somehow show that I really had it figured out, and I said to her, so we're talking about her car, and I said, you know, would there ever come a time, I'm using kind of a would there ever come a time where you felt that driving would not be a good idea? She was in the kitchen, in the sink. She said, don't touch my car. Ever touch my car. Ever. When I'm dead, you can touch my car. If I can't drive it, leave it in the garage. And I left it in her garage. She had a stroke in 2006, a horrible stroke that a lesser woman would have died from. I mean, a terrible, devastating stroke. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move on her left side. My cousin said, are you going to sell the car? I said, not going to happen while she's alive. I'm not going to heaven and have her find me there and say, I told you not to sell the car. So I kept the car. So she bought the car in '89 when my father died. On his deathbed, he said to her, Carol, we're pretty old-fashioned. I've been driving the car our entire marriage. You've never driven in our marriage. It's time for you to learn how to drive. So she basically got a driver's license at 72, got a car, got a Dodge something, a little Dodge something. And she had it from '89 till 2006. So I went to her house to start the car, and I put the key in the ignition. I turned the ignition, and the odometer said 14,000 miles. Beauty shop home, market home. And so that car was a metaphor for her. And even though she was in a nursing home, I never touched that car. Because you remember the first time you drove by yourself? Wasn't there a part of you that said, I'm never coming back? The heck with them. I've got money in a savings account. I'll just go. My point is, a car is a powerful symbol of freedom, and we want that freedom. And so when we go to take it away and we attack them for it, and we attack it from diminishment, they have only one choice, which is to say, don't touch my car. Loss of home. When she had a stroke, she moved out of her house that she'd been in for over 50 years. She wound up going into a hospital and into nursing care. I sat in her house in his lazy boy with the little arm covers worn bare thin and a remote control with no numbers on it, and Collier magazines on the left-hand side, and in the pantry, which I almost called Hazmed for because it was just our 47 varieties of Jell-O, some that have been out of production for 20 years, just lining Jell-Os. But it was her space, it was her world, and she called the shots. And I have to say that a lot of times we ask them to move, like Bill and Susan did. We attacked the last place on earth that she had say with. Let me say it again. We attacked the last place on earth to which she had total say. I didn't touch that house until she passed away. I didn't move a Collier magazine. I didn't touch a Jell-O. I didn't touch anything. I left the car in the garage. It's her space. I'm honoring the courage of living that long to have that space. And of course, there's loss of financial control where, we want to take over their use of money and what have you, but they can't figure that out. Here's the deal with this control. We are younger and meaner, and we can mobilize resources to bully them. We can actually get on top of this with them. We can rally our brothers and sisters and doctors to join us and do it, and we can do it. But I'm going to promise you this. Every older American, every older adult on earth carries a trump card. At the worst possible time, they're going to play that card for you. And when you get it played on you, you'll know you've been played. And there's no going back. And that is the illogical no without comment. No. No, not going to happen. So the question then becomes, if control is so powerful, and if you fail to, by the way, if you're looking for a fight and you want it for the rest of your life and you want to really go into therapy and take a lot of drugs and feel bad about yourself, grab this one by the horns, because we'll find you sobbing in the Ralph's parking lot some night out there by yourself looking for a paramed because you can't win this battle. Even if you win and get them to move, you will be back someplace regretting that you ever possibly said this to yourself, that you ever actually decided to take this tactic with them. So how do we say that we are control friendly? So the very first thing we have to do in our process in dealing with older adults is come across as control friendly, because they assume that we are control hostile until proven otherwise. That's the assumption. You're here to take something away. I don't care how nice you are. I guess you wonder if I'm having a good day and I like some coffee. Now what do you want to take away? And I would say to you, we have to signal we are control friendly. And it cannot be a simple signal that we just simply do and then we assume they got it. We have to actually earn the right to be control friendly. But I think we use control words. We use words that suggest that they get to make choices, that what's your choice, that you're in control. We're trying to figure out what options that you feel are best for you. We're going to talk about some stuff that we want you to be able to decide how you're going to do this. We want to use control words, and there's a whole way of doing this, a whole process of learning how to script this. But it's really powerful. It takes situations that are dead end and brings them back to life again. And the person at first believes you're lying if you've been pressing them for control. But as you are consistent with these control words that you use for them, they lighten up on that process and you create a chance for some new conversation. Which is what Linda found out when she went to take her mom home from the hospital. Her mother had a big surgery for bladder cancer, and it had metastasized, so it involved lymph nodes. It was a big surgery. It was ugly. It had complications. She didn't get out right away. And finally, when she was ready to be discharged, Linda came back to the hospital after spending many weeks there with her mom to take her home. And she found her sitting on the hospital bed with the wheelchair with a little blanket folded on the arm, and her mom dressed to go. And standing in front of her mom was a young doctor, a young guy with his arms folded, which is not the I like you kind of sign we use on Earth. And he seemed to be slightly irritated, and so she walked in and she said to her mother, "Mom, what's going on?" And her mom didn't answer. The doctor answered. She says, "Well, hello, by the way, I'm Dr. So-and-so. You are?" And I'm Linda, her sister. "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm talking to your mom about her cancer. As you know, she has cancer spread outside the bladder. And we want to begin chemotherapy. And I've talked about a protocol we have. There's a very high salvage rate, and I wanted to start right away. And your mom says she doesn't want to do chemotherapy right now. And I'm wondering if you might be able to talk to her and help her understand it's important that we don't lose any time with the treatment." And so Linda turned to her mom. She said, "Mom," and her mom gave her the universal sign that only a parent can give a daughter or a son. And everyone knows what it means. And it's this hand like this. It means stand down in threat of your life. "I don't want to talk about this. Take me home." And Linda read the sign like in a heartbeat and put her mom in the wheelchair. And she said, "We'll get back to you." And off they went. She got her mom home with her cat and her garden and her lazy boy and her neighbors and her car and her friends and her church and the weather and the rhododendrons and the azaleas. Got her home, and after 3 weeks, she kept bringing her lunch every day. After 3 weeks, it's been safe. I can reintroduce this conversation. Let me have a conversation about this. So she begins this conversation. You know, Mom, when you were at the hospital, and her mom said, let me just stop you right here before this turns out bad. I said in the hospital, I'm not having chemotherapy. I'm not having it. If that's too much for you right now, I understand. You can go ahead and we'll talk later. And Linda got up from the chair and bolted out of the house and left and went away. I have to move around the side here. Is this better? All right. So Linda left and went home, very mad at her mother. And the next day she went and saw her aunt, which is her mother's younger sister, and sat down. And you know, we all have an aunt in our family that could be our second mother. We all do. And this was her second mother, who she could tell anything to, and she felt very close to her and came in very huffy and very irate and sat down and sort of unloaded on her aunt about how stupid her mother was being and how she was denying a chance to live to see her grandchildren. She just kind of went on and on and on about what is wrong with my mother. And she finally got it all out of her system. And her aunt listened to her and said, you know, honey, I agree with you. You do? Oh, I do. If that was me and that was my cancer, I'd have that chemotherapy like yesterday. It just makes total sense. But it's not me. It's your mom. I've known her all my life. When she makes up her mind, she makes up her mind. And just so you know, in the last 3 years, 2 of her very close friends have died of cancer, and they both had chemotherapy. And she swore to me, I'll never die like that. So here's your choice. She's going to go on with or without you. You got to decide where you want to be with this. So Linda went home, and she was very irate, still angry and sad. And she could not see her mother for a couple of days because it was too emotional. But she finally went back a week later and had lunch with her and sat down at the little dining room table her mother had, and they sat there quietly for a while with not much being said. She goes, look, I just want you to know that I don't like this decision at all. I'm still kind of mad at you. But it's your life, and I appreciate that, and I was wrong, and I will go wherever you want to go. Understanding that if you change your mind, I will back out of that with you, and we'll go different. And you can change your mind as much as you want, but I'm going with you. You make the choice, and we'll do it together. And she did. And her mom didn't change her mind. And her mom died of that cancer and a peaceful death with dignity. And had Linda not done this, had not given control back to her mother and said, you make the choice and let me partner with you, she would have missed the second task, because there are 2 tasks. She would have spent the entire time over grudge and battle and somehow trying to assert her influence on her mother. But she didn't. She made room for task number 2, because, by the way, this is a task we all want. Spouse, mother, father, brother, sister, friend, colleague, dying, is the conversation you want. Not the control conversation. We settle control because there's a panic. We try to facilitate that and restore dignity. Task number 2 is the one that we want most of all, the one we talk about after they're gone, the one we can say with clarity, we were there when they said it to us, and it changed our hearts about who we are, about who they are, about life. Because in the elder world of communal living, we had these conversations, thought they were coaching us. We thought they were just simply living in our houses. They were coaching us. And we want these conversations. And at the end of our life, we want to tell them ourselves. Task number 2, create a legacy in a world where time is running short. Let me say it again. Create, not discover. Create. You know, in this work that I've done, I initially started in the clinical side of the house, and I went to the advisory side of the house, and I spoke to a lot of older adults in both worlds, and I sort of locked older adults in terms of writing my book. I always got asked the same question. Didn't matter. I heard the same query. They weren't really asking me to answer the question. They were sort of wanted to tell me something, but it came out as a question. It always sounded something like this. How'd I get to be 80? I was just 50. Actually, I was 47 because Marge moved next door with Harry, and Linda went to nursing school, and Eddie had that car that your father hated and threatened to burn. And I think what they're saying is look, this whole thing moved very rapidly on me. It got away from me. I was minding my own business at 50, and now look, I'm 80. I don't have all the answers. Something's very different in my life, and I'm trying to sort it out. It begins as a legacy search. This task sets you in reverse from where you've been most of your life. Most of your life you've been going forward. You go forward at 2 months when you smile so we don't take you back, 4 months when you roll over, 6 months when you sit up, and 1 year when you walk, and you never look back until you're about 70. And then life does a retrograde on you, reverses you on your legacy search. Life turns you around involuntarily. You have your own personal Christmas Carol event. And you begin an involuntary life review. This is big stuff. We've got to go back. You know, we make fun of, we scold, we denigrate, we try to distract older adults from living in the past. They've been assigned to the past. That's their march. They've been assigned to the past, to go back and unwind the past. To first of all mine it and then unwind it. And we're angry because they're not in the present, because they want them to be present-focused. And so what happens is we have to go into voluntary life review, and so we start retrieving the past. We, of course, bring up always conflicts, losses, which, I mean, sometimes the things you say at 80 about a loss, you can't believe you're actually saying it, because you didn't say it at 60 or 40 or 20. Some commentary about some insight that happens to you along the way that changes your view of the loss. Turning points. Who we loved and may not have loved us back, or who loved us and we may not have loved them. Successes and regrets. All this comes up in a very nonlinear fashion. It all starts to surface. We are sent out into the ocean of life review to gather all of this raw material from which we will craft a legacy. We will make a statement about who we are. Yeah, there's money involved and there's trust, and all that's true. But that's not the purpose of legacy. Legacy is to come to terms with a life that we've lived, to answer some very basic, profound, Shakespearean, spiritual questions about who we are as people in this journey we live. We're all pilgrims. We're all going to Canterbury. We're in the same tribe. You know, we separate ourselves so quickly from another human. I'm not like you. I'm different. You're female. I'm male. We're just really the same person. Same suffering. The same struggles. Trying to sort out life. So we're dancing with ghosts. This task is about dancing with ghosts. When you ask older adults to recall this life review process, the things that are brought to their most vivid forefront of the stage are people who have passed away. And if you're quiet and ask the questions correctly, you actually get to meet that person. They are holographically there back in the room with you. It's a powerful recreation of how human beings operate. So we are dancing with ghosts. We want to answer some very important legacy questions. We're actually confronting questions. Because now life in this task, life is saying to you, these things are falling out of control, you know, batten down the hatches, get ready for a dogfight here before you go. You know, it's going to take everything you got to maintain control. By the way, I'm going to have to ask you some tough questions while we're at it. While you're on the Alamo, let's have a little conversation about who you are. What's the meaning of all this? All you went through. Married to an alcoholic, divorced, remarried, handicapped son, husband died of cancer, son left home at 13, never came back. What's the meaning of all that now that you're 85 years old? Did I make a difference? Actually, to whom did I make a difference? Come on, give me the name. I said this to a woman who had a hospital wing named after her and was the lead matriarch of all charities in town in a big U.S. city. Lots of money, lots of wealth, lots of power. She jumped out of her chair, almost knocked over, and pointed a finger at me, which is always a bad sign when a patient's pointing a finger at you. To whom did I make a difference? The 4 idiots I married? The morons my kids married? The 3 CEOs that embezzled me? This was like a tirade. So what she said was, I have lots of money and I can write big checks, but did I really make a difference to what matters to me the most? What are my last instructions? In the communal world, with embedded elders, these instructions went on for a long time, but became very acute towards the end of life. And they were instructions about who I am and what you need to know about you. There were powerful coaching conversations that took place in an embedded social structure. And lastly, will I be remembered? If you don't read W.H. Auden, you ought to read his poem called Night Mail, because that's the end line of that poem is, will I be remembered? Who would dare think themselves not to be remembered? These are the questions that they're asking. The gathering, and it's not a linear process. It's back and forth, back and forth. It's consumptive. So how do we signal we are legacy friendly? Because if we settle the control issue and they said, good, you're not trying to take something away from me, or at least you're giving me the courtesy of asking my opinion of it, then let's get on to the conversation I want to have about who I am in my life. I'm sorting out my life, the one last run at this life. How do we do this? And the way you become legacy friendly is that you figure out how to ask legacy questions. These are open-ended questions with your shoulders down, with your iPhone put away, with that look on your face like, hurry up, I want an answer. I was in clinical medicine in Central California, and I was the provider for a family, so I knew grandma, and I knew the newborns, and I knew the adults in the middle, and I was first up in the morning, and there was a chart, and she came in the room, and I knew the wife of the family, and I knew their family pretty well. They were probably married about 15 years, had some kids, and they were a good family, and the chart said normal temperature here for, and they put it for flu. She wasn't feeling well to be seen. So I was busy, and I really wanted to get this short visit over. So, but something said to me in looking at her body language, you can't do that. So I took the chart and I put it on the sink in the room, washed my hands. The little four-legged stool that you ride around and we're not in the room, and when you scoot around we hear you yelling in there on that little stool. Yeah. I pushed that stool all the way back to the wall and I sat on it, and I didn't fold my arms, I dropped my arms, and I said to her, what's going on? She said, I have a cold, I want to divorce my husband. What should we talk about first? My point is that the ability to ask questions where your body language, 90% of what you say is in your body, which says, I'm ready for wherever the answer goes, we're going together. Wherever the answer goes, we're going together. I don't care if I've heard it before, it doesn't matter, we're still going. So, I'm in Portland, Oregon, we're my hometown, and my mom and we've had a breakthrough. I've had the breakthrough. She's been the same. I've come alongside. We're doing well. She's in her early 80s. I have kids. She loves her granddaughters. Life is good, and we're at Starbucks. Now, we had to go to IHOP first and buy her coffee because she wouldn't drink Starbucks coffee. So I brought this little paper foam cup into Starbucks with me when I bought my $5 coffee, and we're having a conversation. And I know that I have to begin on the suburbs of this conversation, and so what I do is I turn my phone off, I take off my suit coat, I'm traveling between business meetings, I'm in Portland, push the chair back, I relax my time, we start talking, so tell me what's going on, what's happening with you, just open-ended questions, what does that look like, how is that working, and just sort of having this conversation. We kind of begin in the suburbs, and then she starts talking about a friend of hers who had lost a sister. A friend of hers was in her 70s. Her sister was like a couple years older. She said, well, she didn't lose her sister like I did. And all of a sudden, how you get a light goes off in your brain? Tone of voice says, now you want to ask a question, you can't talk. You have to sit. There's called constructive tension in the air. I want to say, who are you talking about? But I couldn't say that. I was 10 years old when Myrtle died. Myrtle was the star swimmer of the family, 18 years old. Looked like a model, short blonde hair, state champion swimmer in Minnesota. Darling of the ball, had a million boyfriends. 10 years older than my mom, 8 years older than my mom. Took care of my mom. In a big family, sometimes the older sister or the next older sister takes care of the younger one. Second mom to her. So, she was 8, I was 10 when she died. I remember the night we were outside. It was summer. They were going for swimming in the lake, and she got in a car with her boyfriend. They took off and they went swimming. And I waited by the curb for her to come home that night, and it got dark, and she didn't come home. And my mom came out and said to me, don't worry about this. They're out having a good time. Come up on the porch where we have an old couch. Just wait for her there. And I fell asleep on the couch, and I don't remember falling asleep, but I fell asleep. And then I heard the scream around 1 o'clock in the morning. It was my mom on the phone screaming and crying and yelling for me. And Myrtle had drowned. She had gone swimming in a lake that had a very cold undercurrent, and at sunset, and somehow cramped up and went under. And her sister went to get her, her older sister, who almost died getting her, and they couldn't get her, and she died. And my life's never been the same. I've never been the same person. I'm sitting in Starbucks. My mother is starting to tell this story about the one thing we never talk about in my family ever, about the death of this sister because they felt someone let her down and couldn't rescue her, about a change in life's directions, about what she admired the most. Legacy questions, asking what's going on. So, a year after that, I am doing work for Doctors of the World, and I see a bulletin for the Zapatitas down in the Yucatan Peninsula, which are a group of native Indians who are having a terrible time in Mexico in terms of struggling for health care, and they're losing their land and what have you. And there's a group of nuns down there that have a sanctuary run by nuns who take care of mothers and children and defy the army and refuse to move in the face of guns and threats and what have you. And they have a charity. They need some funding. So I'm talking to my mom on the phone. I said, would you ever consider funding something that was Catholic? She's a Lutheran, right? So I said this to her, right? She goes, instead of saying no, she said, what are you talking about? So I talked to her about the values of these women that were very much like my cousin, my aunt Myrtle, a giving heart, looking out for other people, always standing up for other people. And so she said, I would. I said, let's do it in her memory. She said, let's do it in her memory. The reason you want life review questions is because the legacy starts to surface in front of your very eyes, and the person talking to you doesn't even realize what they're saying in that process. Final mission of life. Lasting and leaving. What a difficult thing to be involved in. One requiring facilitation so you don't get overrun and you don't sink in control, and the other one requiring patience and kindness and questions to open up someone's heart to be able to help them track their story and facilitate their legacy. So let's go back, when I close this presentation, let's go back and take a look at Bill and Susan again. And let's assume that they know this, or at least we know this now about what's going on behind the scenes, and see if we cannot interpret what their parents are actually saying in that conversation. Number one, what were Bill and parents trying to signal to their children? Because they were sending out a clear signal in that conversation when they said no. What were they trying to say? And I think they're trying to say two things. Number one, we need to preserve some semblance of control here. Just give us a little room to be in control. Give us a few choices. Humor us. Give us some shred of dignity. Give us room to live on our own terms. We're leaving. We know that. Unless we die in this house, we're going to probably go someplace. We won't be able to carry on forever, but give us some room. Set it up so we get to leave on our own terms. Give us permission to talk like that. Help us retain that dignity. Number two, we're not finished with this house. We were raised in this house. All the important events of our life occurred in this house. This house means a lot to us. We're doing life review. We need some time to walk through this house and be done. And when we're done, we are done, and we'll let it go. Bottom line, we'll let it go. So here are my final thoughts before I take questions. The things we cannot change. When I was early in my medical career, I was enthused about curing everything and everybody. Of course, that didn't last very long. And, pretty soon you realize that most of what you see you don't really cure. And as you deal with it, you become, I'm not sure, jaded, but you certainly kind of takes you back. But early in my career, my senior rotation, I was with a very successful pediatrician at the University of Washington who was a legend, actually, a great man. And I was on rotation with him. He didn't like most of the interns, and he was very rough. For some reason he liked me. I guess he liked just my manner with patients, but he and I became friends. He wasn't so rough with me, and we were doing rounds one day, and we were seeing patients. That was like 30 patients in an afternoon, and we were really busy. We popped into a room, and there was an 8-year-old girl and her mother. This young lady was battling leukemia. She had been in remission 3 times and had fallen out for the 4th time and was not going to come back. I had this chart in my hand, and I had read the chart in the hall, and we had a brief conversation. I walked in the room, and I started having this conversation, and I was really... I didn't know what to do. So I started talking about lab tests, and I started kind of just, wandering around sounding stupid, I guess. I said to her, would you mind if we just briefly had a consult in the hall? We'll be right back. So he took me out by the sleeve and walked me down the long corridor of that clinic down to the end where the fire escape was, and we were standing there. It was raining outside. It was Seattle. It was cold. And I could see that he wanted to scream at me. So he was looking for better words. He said, let me ask you, what's the purpose of medicine? Oh, the purpose of medicine. Yes, indeed. The purpose of medicine is to be able to bring to the... He says, no, maybe you misunderstood me. What's the purpose of medicine? Well, doctor, the purpose of medicine is to... And I said, clearly you don't know. You don't know. So I'm going to tell you. I want you to remember this forever. And never, ever violate this again like you're doing today. You're embarrassing me. The purpose of medicine is to cure when possible and comfort always. The daughter's dying, the mom's dying with her. Now come with me. We're going back to comfort this family that's going to experience a horrible loss. And he was right. And I believe that in the language that we evoke, the way we speak to older adults, the sensitivity towards their developmental needs that we would easily do for a 2-year-old or an adolescent that we now need to do for older adults, gives them comfort. The preservation of dignity gives them comfort. The life review questions give them comfort. We cannot unwind their decisions or their demise, but we can deliver to that population something that most of the world doesn't deliver, maybe even care about. This is incredible comfort. And from my point of view, as a calling, whether it's my parents, my siblings, my neighbor, my colleague, a patient, a client, I can't think of any higher calling. Whatever else I'm going to be doing in that particular day in that conversation, I'm going to be able to offer something that will. We arrive here depending on the kindness and care of friends and family and strangers to get stabilized for our walk on this earth. And before we know it, we are traversing with gray hair and we're older. And it happens so quick that we just can't believe that that part of the dance is over. And then we realize at some point that we're depending on the kindness of family and friends and strangers once again to stabilize us before we leave. So I would say to you that our call, our collective call, be it pedestrian, layman, family member, professional, is always the same call. You can never fail in this call if you basically decide it means something to you, and that is to cure when possible, comfort always. Thank you. Thank you. So we're ready for questions? And I have a mic person over here. I can move away from the screen. Perfect.
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I am a marketing director at a continuing care retirement community.
Right.
So I sit across from, prospective residents who are there. They've presented themselves, so they are already ensconced in the process. But I often get that there is still some resistance.
Right.
And I have the impression, in part, that it's because they realize that this is probably their last move. So it has everything to do with mortality.
Right.
Is there an appropriate way to broach that subject with them? Probably not. But if anybody could do that, maybe you could have some suggestions.
Well, there's no question about what it means, and that's why moving to outside the home is such a difficult decision emotionally, because it signals the end at some degree. I mean, you say, if I leave this house, I'm probably not coming back. And they're there because the events have conspired to put them there. It's probably a good choice for their situation, but they're basically suffering a tremendous amount of grief and loss. I always think it's not, the idea sometimes when the mistake we make with grief is that we try to distract people from that grief. We try to get it to get over really quickly. Never works. I think it's best to address the grief right up and somehow show that what they're losing over here can be rebuilt in part where they are right now. I always say to them, your decision to move or think about moving from where you live right now, I want to know more about where you live now. Tell me about your house. Tell me about how you moved in. Tell me about why you like it. Tell me what's close by to where you live. Give me your story about your house, and in some version of that. I want to see the house. Because I cannot say that I have some empathy for them losing that if I don't understand what it is. And it gives me a clue as to what is important for them. And then you can make a transition over conversation, say, that there's no way to replace what you're giving up here in terms of these issues, but there are ways that we can rebuild control for you. I say to children whose parents are moving, I said, you have to go to that assisted living, that independent living, wherever you're going, and you have to figure out a working list of all the areas of control for your parents. And you need to be able to show them that control. When lights are off, who comes in your room, what kind of food you want, who gets to call, who doesn't, who does this, that. I mean, you have to really say, and the possessions you take and where their pets can be, I mean, the whole deal. You've got to say, I get it about control, and maybe I can build some new ones in for you. But I'm saying to you, first of all, you deal with the grief. You allow them to grieve the loss, and the transition is very, very difficult. And you can say, and I also think it's important to say to them, you've been through this before. And it broke your heart every time it happened before. You've lost a family member, you lost a brother, you lost a husband, your kids moved out, they went to school, they never came back. You've been through this before. It is a process, it's a process where you're changing. But on the other side of this change, besides control, I think there are the reasons that you tell me why you're changing. These are some things that I think we can actually act to embellish your life. That I want you to try. That I want you to just try. But you have to be able to acknowledge the loss as opposed to simply, oh, it's not, come on, this will be fun over here. It never works. And usually, the adult kids are, when you have an older client, you don't have them, you have their kids too. They're a package. You can't separate them. And they're either helpful, annoying, or both in the same gesture. They're either over nice or trying to press their parents to move, or don't want to spend the money because they want to burn down their inheritance. My advice is get a job. That would be good for you to somehow go to work and get your own money. I know it's all kind of old-fashioned, but you want to get a job. But I think that it's really important a lot of times when you come in, sometimes when you have adult children there in front of you, the parents aren't there, is to educate them over what this loss of control is going to mean and how they have to talk about it in terms of transition. I mean, Bill and Susan had a great idea. They presented it so poorly. And if you're sitting in front of Bill and Susan's parents at your organization, part of it is honoring that grief and that loss in ways that you can identify the control lines that you want to somehow mimic where you're at, and also honor things that basically in all losses in life don't get to be reconstructed, but get to be honored. And there's ways you want to do that. People believe you when you have empathy. They do not believe you when you have a marketing script. They believe when you have empathy. And if you have empathy with a story of your own, about your own life, not someone you've seen, but your own life. Well, my mom finally had to this, and they hear it. They go, wow, this has been found on real experience. I'll not agree with them, but I won't actually shut them out either. And that's where you have the credibility for this. But they're not fighting me for control. They're actually acknowledging what a big deal this is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And I've read your book, and I've given it to many of
thank you.
Daughters and sons of prospects, and it's been very helpful.
That book has had an interesting life. It began as being bought by my people, the boomers, who were trying to fix their parents or themselves or both. Then it got bought by their parents. It got highlighted, given back to the kids, telling you, figure it out. And now the boomers are back buying again for them because we're all getting older. What was that? What do you say about where am I going to have? Oh my gosh. So it's when you discover developmental tasks, they are timeless. The book works over time because the tasks really don't really change. They don't change for the terrible twos. They don't change for the adolescent. They don't change for middle age. It doesn't matter how many gadgets you have or how cool you are or what kind of car you drive or what kind of iPhone you have. You're still going through the tasks. And so they're very useful, but they're a great way to educate people to say, older adults were never told this. They just simply came from a communal world and got put into our world. So by telling them what's going on helps them a lot to understand they're not crazy, they're not trying to be obstructionists, but it explains what they're living, and I think we have a right to tell them that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So much a question as an observation, and it's kind of interesting. These two situations arose almost simultaneously. Last night, House of Hope, in conjunction with CLU, had a presentation on how to start the conversation. which is the talk, essentially.
You're talking about dying.
Well, it's a whole thing.
Oh, the whole deal.
Yeah.
I thought you said the talk.
Well, but one of the aspects that sort of came out, and they didn't treat it briefly or lightly, but this idea of grief and dealing with it, and how in a communal situation, the grief was almost always around you because you had a family that was going through something. You know, some parent or some aunt was lost, but you were close enough to really feel that, and the grief was continual. There's always something. And now, if I remember correctly, and I know there's some ladies out there who will correct me, we don't seem to have the time allowed to grieve because something else has to be done.
Well, death is very inconvenient for us. I can say that. Yes, I think that we've moved into cubicles. We've become a dispersed society in our cubicles. I live in Calabasas. I don't know half of my neighbors after 20 years. I don't go down and say hi to them. We don't have dinner together. We don't hang out in the summer. So we're very siloed in our world, and so we get broadsided by these kind of experiences without any communal impact on it. When my mom one time was telling me a story about growing up in the Norwegian slums of Minneapolis where immigrants came and worked, and she said 2 doors down was a family that had a couple of kids, and both mom and dad worked late at night in some factory or whatever, and they were coming home. It was back in a time when there were no crossing gates. There were just little signs, and they both were killed. And the same night, they died. A train hit the car and killed them both. And so I said to her, "What happens to the kids?" I know my mom looked at me like the way your mom would look inside the bassinet at your bed and go, "That's not my baby. I'm not taking him home. No, that's not. It's right over there." Like I'd lost my mind. In the communal world, I said, we took him in, David. We took the boys in. The communal world, grief, that we were all interconnected. No one ever thought there was a separation. There was grief. Grief was public, and we had groups of mourners that come alongside you and help you deal with it. You were carried by a social network, and now we don't have that. So grief is very foreign to us. I would say that if you're going to stay on Earth for a while, a book I'd recommend about boomer grief is Joan Didion's A Year of Magical Thinking. If you haven't read it, I'm going to tell you that, first of all, better to read it privately because it'll make you sob, but it'll also open up the wonderful nonlinear world of what grief really is, called A Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. Her husband died unexpectedly on Christmas Eve, just crashed to the floor dead and left her and sent her into outer space. And I got to tell you that nonlinear world of grief is so powerful. You will never, ever say stupid things again to people who have had death in their family, ever again. You will open your hearts in a very different way, but it's a very powerful book. But, we do not have, as boomers, we're not all that great at patience because we know it all. When we come into the exam room, we have our little website papers with us and what have you. But we actually are desperately looking for communal connections. We're culturally not built for that. Even though we were going to all live in communes, we're not very communal people. So grief is tough for us. Grief we wind up having to have as a status dance, where we basically have to somehow pretend like we're doing okay, or having some sort of show of it, or it becomes another event in our life. And grief is not that. Grief, your DNA changes and never ever again reorganize itself in the same kind of way. And we need more understanding about how grief and how we dance with grief. So anyway, that book is a wonderful book. Yes.
I do have a question, being an older senior, and I find that it's very difficult when a senior is put into a care living assistance home. A lot of the boomers and a lot of even older children, they bring in their parents, whether they're male or female, and they dump them, and they never come back to visit them. If they do come back, like I had one, I visit them very often, and this one gentleman told me, which I had already observed, that he actually came from a family of 6 or so sons, and they flipped a coin to see who was going to come to visit their mother, and he was elected, and he was really put out about it. He didn't want it at all, but they made him because he lost the bet. So he would come in. He would spend like 15 minutes with his elderly mother, placing the floor, putting his hands in his pocket, jingling the money and all this sort of thing. And she would say something, and it would be yes or no answer. And she told me one time, she says, why can't he tell me about my grandchildren? Why can't he talk about my friends or neighbors or somebody that I'm interested in? What about himself? What is he doing now? Why can't they talk to us? And I find that that was more and more and more in talking to a lot of those seniors in that home. The lack of communication, it's just like they cut them off. They don't want to say anything more to them. They spend their time with them, and that's it. And how do you deal with such a thing like that?
Well, it's the loss of elders. The elder status is lost. Elders were revered and communicated with and talked to and included and embedded in the conversation and were considered to be part of it. I think, there's a lot of discussion as to why this is happening. I think part of it is that we created a child-centric society with the boomers. My generation became child-centric. Before that, we were not child-centric. We had kids. If they died, it was bad, but we went on, and we were a communal society. You saw Saving Private Ryan. You know what a communal society does. The gates open, you go, you're going to die. It doesn't matter. It's for the better good. It's a group-centric ethos of society. My generation and the generation behind me, X and Y, or millennials, are all child-centric, hyper-child-centric. And so that the issue is I don't ever want to be uncomfortable because it's all about me. And so I'm not prepared to essentially engage with the empathy for something that scares me to death, which aging does. Aging is considered to be a disease, a terrible thing to have. Even though I love my grandparents, aging is considered to be a very bad thing. No preparation for grief, no preparation for aging, no sense of obligation. So I would say that these kids are not attached to their aging parents. The aging occurs at a distance from them, and they simply want to go away because everything else in life was taken away when it was uncomfortable. It's not. It's embarrassing behavior, but also I think it's not one that we're going to reverse per se. It's one that we have to work around. And I would think that with 76 million boomers, we have ample people that could actually go. We could find programs to go ahead and adopt people that are in needing of companionship in senior living. I mean, I think the senior living industry owes us the architecture and the software and the determination to say, I can tell you on Monday there are 10 people in this building that need companions. And I'll round them up out on the boomer world there and the Gen X world. I'll round them up. And there are single people who don't have parents take care of themselves. I want from you people with kind hearts. I need an hour a day, 3 days a week, that kind of thing. I think we're going to have to figure out a different, humane way to be able to accept this. We can't unwind it. We can't make those families go back. I mean, your story should be heard by every person in the country because we hear it every single day over and over again.
There was another thing, too, in regards to this, in regards to how the staff were treating the elderly. And I was absolutely appalled whenever one of the staff members says, we're attending a big meeting today so that we are going to be told how to deal with the elderly. I said, well, good. I'd like to know how that's going to turn out. And so
give me some clues.
When I saw that particular person again, and I said, well, how did the meeting go? She says, well, we were told how to treat the elderly. And I said, well, how was that? And he said, we were supposed to be more aggressive. I said, excuse me?
Really?
We're supposed to be more aggressive with them. They're so mean, they just don't want to do anything that we want to tell them. And so we're supposed to be more aggressive. That's what they're teaching them.
Well, if you don't understand the agenda, all you're going to teach is management, and that's what happens. You basically teach them how to be caregivers as opposed to having any kind of partnership with them.
That was totally wrong,
It was. It is.
It's got a rebellion because, for one thing, the elderly people have gone through an awful lot in their life. And you're not going to tell them something or other. They're going to put up their fist and stick up for themselves.
You've not earned the right to tell me.
Be right. And if you're going to be more aggressive, if you can't sweet talk them into doing it, then you're going to be more aggressive. That's just going to bring more and more.
That's a no-win. That's a no-win. That gets ugly. Yeah, we need different training. Anybody else? Okay.
Building on the idea that you were mentioning in response to this lady's questions or observations about maybe people in the community supporting elder community, and especially in different housing. I also think about that in terms of the just the way we're all spread around the country and how we're all the families are dispersed.
Right.
And I've often thought, I mean, my family, my mother's across the country, and I would happily, I mean, she's in her own home still, but I would happily spend time with her regularly if she was nearby.
Right.
And so I'm thinking a lot of people in this situation, it's not new. So it makes sense that maybe we can all contribute in our own way, in our own community, and somebody there contributes in her community rather than worrying about running around the country, because there's plenty of need everywhere we go, and actually people need it here as much as my mother needs it.
Right.
So, not a new idea, but it just kind of all builds.
Well, we had a Peace Corps, and we have big brothers and big sisters, so we have ways of organizations that will, in fact, step in and lend a hand. We can't do it all. We live out of town. Have people who have kind hearts who've been screened properly want to come in and basically be a part of that. That would be a great thing. So I just think that it's like, well, looking at boomers, my generation, we're kind of flat-footed. We're the most disabled generation in the history of the world. We're the most divorced generation in the history of the world. We're the most co-blended generation in the history of the world. We're just kind of waiting for life to come and deliver the goods to us, and it's not going to happen. For example, in terms of health care, we should have barefoot doctors going through the entire boomer population, helping people live healthy lives. We're waiting for someone else to solve our problems. And as far as care for aging parents, we need to have partners that are same mind and same hearts helping us do this process. It's kind of sad we haven't actually mobilized this before, but we are waiting for society to bring us the architecture we need to create ourselves. Yes, sir.
David, on the Today Show this morning, they showed the Grand Care system. And in answer to the lady's question over here about kids frequently communicating with their parents, the kids today are so involved in this sandwich generation with their children, with all their activities, and also with an aging parent. But this system helps in bridging the gap. It uses a technology which has been around for a while called Skype. And it gives them the opportunity with their digital devices that they're texting and they're engaged in social media to call their parents and let their parents communicate with them, video to video. It's not like being there, but it's the next closest thing, and it can become more frequent.
I think it has possibility as an adjunct, but I really think that nothing replaces the in-person walking in the room, hugging the person, sitting down next to them, holding their hand, being there. We're as human beings, we're just starving for connection. Actually, my daughter's in college, and she was asking me about a job interview, and I had the thought to myself, you're brilliant at Twitter, and you're brilliant at texting, you're brilliant at Facebook, and you're a great student, but, the practicalities of sitting down with people and having conversations, is still, we're human beings, There's no technology that's going to ever release us from the burden that we need. We don't get comfort from technology, ever. We get comfort from other people. But I think as an adjunct to a situation where you've built a bridge, I think then that becomes very receptive. As a surrogate, my feeling is that it's somehow, I think it's better as part of the solution, not as a replacement. That makes sense. Yeah.
David, I met you as an ombudsman. So there are programs out there if people would like to volunteer, such as the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, where you do go into facilities that people are living, and from what our instructions are, and I know a number of my fellow ombudsmen are here today. I'm thrilled. What? Oh, yes, ma'am. But this program is one where you do go in, and in California, I think it's 60% of people in facilities have no visitors at all. So what the lady said is unfortunately all too true. But if you have some extra time, if you're looking for something, a lot of the bigger facilities have volunteer programs that you could go in and spend a little time. And the Ombudsman program is so good because you go in and you're watching out for them, but you're also visiting and spending time. It's the people who look most forward forward to seeing me in my life, and I have a family too. So, but they really are so thrilled for just a little time sometimes. So if you've got it, great program. See Cindy at Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and she'll help you. So thank you, and thank you for a wonderful, really helpful presentation.
I think your program is a good alternative. I think you need a better PSA on it, though. You know, most kids and young adults are wired to YouTube and to emotional kind of footage, and if you could show a PSA of somebody walking into a facility where someone hasn't had a visit for a long time, is sitting down and showing the progression of that in a short video presentation that's not bureaucratic but is built to basically say, here's something you can do that isn't going to take a lot of your time and your money. Because I think you have a good program, you just need a better pitch for it to engage people to do it. You do. It's a great thing. All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, David. And see, I know we've got a couple more things. Len, you want to take it?
I can pass it right back to you. Unfortunately, Martin Shentis, who was next in the for committee reports, is absent. Martin, I hope that you're okay. And I will interject, for those of you who are in the other room, thank you very much for hanging with us. There are 25 invisible people over there.
Yeah, Marty, come back, because you're the next one. What? Yeah. Oh, okay. So Dave is going next door? Oh, okay. Yeah, Dave is going next door with the 25 folks that Len was just talking about. We'll be there to answer any direct questions, too. Yeah, Marty's got to come back because he was supposed to do something on the RSVP. All right, here comes Andrea to catch us up on the Global Adult Center.
Well, first of all, as far as RSVP, just let everybody know they are have all their tax volunteers in place. Taxes are taking place for free. For those that have an income of $50,000 or less, regardless of your age, or over 60. And it'll be on Wednesdays at the Newbury Park Library from 9 to 2. And then Thursday, Fridays at the Global Center from 9 to 3. And so you can come and get those free, done free. We have a whole bunch of stuff that you need to bring with you, but it's an ever-growing program, and it's awesome. We talked earlier about will you pass your next driving test, and that is Friday, February 22nd from 1:30 to 3, and that is at the Global Adult Center. I do know we have about, as of when I left today, there was about 6 or 7 spots left, so it is almost full. The transportation ride guides that was spoken of earlier at the beginning, that is Wednesday, February 20th at 12:30, and space is limited as well on that, so definitely give us a call. And as Paul was talking about earlier with Caneo Walks, we still have some walks, and we're kind of becoming a clearinghouse of other places to walk. And this is a really neat one coming up at the end of March. I'm going to bill it now because I know it's going to fill up. It's a living history of the Caneo Valley. So we're going to have some historical reenactors that are going to contribute to the development of the Caneo Valley. So they're going to reenact who they were. So they will be appearing in their costumes and telling their stories and whatnot. And it is limited registration, and it is $5. So you definitely want to make sure you get up with that. So those are the big things coming up. And then also this Friday will be our trip registration. So if you're interested in any of our really cool trips that are coming up, it's a Flower Mart tour and lunch with Felipe's, Huntington Library tea and estate tour, and around the world in a day. So those are some really cool trips, and they go on sale this Friday starting at 9 a.m. And that is just all really cool stuff, and I know we've got to get off the air. But again, if you need anything about Global Adult Center or any other programs, call 805-381-2744. You can always email us at gsac@crpd.org. So, and all staff will see that, and you'll definitely get a response back. So is there any questions from anybody up there?
All right.
Well, thank you as always, Andrea. Sorry we're running a little bit short on
Oh,
time.
that's all right. It was a really cool presentation.
Anything else from commissioners? I know we're short.
Well, I would like to at least mention that our program next month will be a plethora of UCLA physicians. They're going to talk to us on a wide range of subjects, mostly around the general theme of prevention, the sorts of things you can do to not get sick, or if you have chronic conditions, there'll be some discussion of that. There will be a fairly lengthy discussion on osteoporosis and some of the things you can do to keep yourself in motion. So I would encourage everyone to give us a buzz and come see us next. What's the date for the next the first Wednesday of March? March 6th. It should be a terrific program.
Number 6. All right. Well, this is a wonderful example of our show today of all the things that are going on in the Conejo. I sometimes am amazed at what can be done, and thank you, Jim and Nancy, for bringing Dave to our attention and having him for us. It really was quite a, if not an enlightening, as well as thought-provoking. Please take advantage of a lot of things that are going on that we talked about today. I mean, Andrea mentioned the transportation. I'll plug it again. I mean, this is a great way to get around the Conejo if you have other problems doing it. The Miss Senior America, it is an elegant time for women. And I'd certainly like to see us continue with this pageantry. So if you're of the mind, please look in applying for that. The Conejo Walk, thank you again for getting this going and organizing it, Paul and the folks. And I'm so happy with the Resource Center that Brenda and Dinah Fishton have really worked so hard to get. It's a magnificent program. We're really looking forward to starting it, and you'll be hearing more about that. I mean, we'll really want you folks to take advantage of it. And then again, thank you, Atria, for your lunch today. I do appreciate it. All right, we're going to bring down the hammer on this session then. It is done. Thank you.
You're good.